Hiya then folks, welcome to Boating on a Budget with me, the Tight Yorkshireman, here on our project narrowboat, Leander Lady. Today we're making a compost toilet. Yes, a compost toilet. I'm sure there's a few out there who it's already set alarm bells ringing saying, well, CRT, that's Canal and River Trust, are basically outlawing. Is outlawing the right phrase? Are outlawing these type of toilets. Because what they're saying is, the waste that's generated can't be put in the big red bins that they supply around the system. However, here on our home mooring, there's a full setup for dealing with the waste that comes from these. And I will show you that once we've actually built our toilet. And I think it will be quite a surprise to a lot of people. Because you do get a lot of the naysayers, shall we say, who kind of say, oh, it's dirty, it's smelly, it's horrible, you don't want to be dealing with things like that. But I think in reality, how we'll deal with the stuff that comes from this compost toilet is perhaps even favourable to dealing with a cassette toilet and possibly even a pump out toilet. Let's have a look at what we're going to be doing today then and what we're actually going to be needing. First off, just a normal toilet seat. That's one Dawn picked up while she was shopping the other day. Yeah, Dawn shopping. Shock horror, eh? Next thing we need is what's called the separator. And bearing in mind, all ladies and all gentlemen need to sit down while you're using a compost toilet. No matter what you're doing, you sit down. So in effect, the long and short of it is, as the name suggests, it's a separator. Liquids end up going down that hole there, and solids go down that hole there. We've then got a bucket that collects the solids, and this works a bit like a cat litter tray, if you like. We add in some of this kind of pet bedding, which is like a sawdust based bedding. Put some of that in to start with, and then add that as you use the toilet. We'll cover that as we go along. The main crux of the build though is going to be using these old desktops here. We're going to make the body of the toilet out of those. Quick clean up, we are going to keep a lot of the character to them, but ultimately where it is anyway, you're not going to see most of this. The main bits that you're going to see are kind of the edges and things like that, and obviously it all adds to the character. So I think all I need to do then is have a swig of my brew, which is here conveniently waiting on top of the log burner, tidy these few bits away, get out the tools, and we'll get cracking. First job then, let's get this toilet seat out. Because what I need to make sure is, as we build the toilet in the bathroom, which as you can see I've took the little wall down so you can see what we're doing, I need to make sure the toilet's far enough forward so that the seat actually lifts up without banging into the back of the wall. But likewise, I don't want it too far forward where obviously we're going to be peeking out the front of the bathroom whilst using the toilet. It must be said, I'm not sure why Dawn bought a white toilet seat knowing we're building the actual toilet out of natural woods. But Dawn's choice, not mine. Let's just whip that open as well. This is going to be somewhere around about there. But like I said, what I'm wanting to make sure is this is far enough forward so that when you lift the seat up, it's got a chance to lean back against that wall there. If it's too far back, obviously it's not going to stay up, and while you're trying to use the toilet, it's going to be trying to fall down on you. So I think if I mark it up by eye, I know if it's far enough forward there, so that's where we're going to want to come to. I can then measure the toilet seat itself and that distance and make sure we make the box work so it comes far enough out. So where I marked it is about 10 inches from the back there. So if we have 10 inches plus the length of the toilet seat, which is, that'll take it up to 29 inches. So if we make it 30, that'll allow for a little bit of the actual box work to come just in front of the toilet. The fine tweaking of the positions we'll do once the main frame's made. So we basically need to cut two sides 30 inches long. What I've done is, because we're using reclaimed timbers, I've just had a quick look at all the corners, and this looks to be the nicest one. Not necessarily the best corner, but the nicest one, because obviously that's what you're going to see. With the way this is all going to sit, you're not going to actually see this face, or obviously the other face. So the sides of it, on this edge, this is the edge that's going to be here, next to the wall, don't matter too much. But we need it 30 inches long. Next measurement we need is, a normal toilet is about 16 inches high. That's the actual toilet, not including the toilet seat. So again, measure 16 inches. Tricky bit working with reclaimed timber is because there's that many marks and things on there. Trying to make sure you can see which is your pencil mark. We will also need a cutout in this corner here. That's obviously fit round the wing of the floor. But I think as first job, cut two of these, one for each side, and we can then scribe and mark out for those extra cuts. That's my two side pieces cut out then, and I can't really show you in that corner because it's difficult to get the camera in there and to measure up, but basically I've marked out the rectangle there, that once I've cut that out, that'll allow the board to slide right back and go over the little wing that's on the corner of the floor. To cut that out is going to be a bit trickier. I'm going to have to use the circular saw to get part way down, and then just use the jigsaw just to finish off the corners. That just shows then what I meant by those cutouts at the bottom of each piece, just so it fits around those little wings. Now I'm happy that's going to sit into position alright. Can take that back over to the workbench and we'll carry on building. This next piece then is probably the most important piece. It's basically the top of the toilet. It's where that separator is going to get cut into and the toilet seat is going to get mounted on. For this, I had to look through a few of the boards that I got and try and find one that were as flat as possible. Obviously, we don't want it too curved, otherwise that separator is not going to sit right into it, and the toilet seat won't sit properly onto it either. So I've measured up, this one needs to be 15 inches wide, and then it needs to be about 29.5 inches long, which is about half an inch shorter than the main frame. I'm not trying to butt those joints right up so that they come nice and smooth. There's just going to be a little step back from them. The final piece to this will obviously then be, once I've cut that to 15 inches, that's going to leave a square corner there, whereas this is rounded. So I'm going to have to then add in a little rounded corner, trying to make it look used. So I'll cut it with the jigsaw and then just sort of tap it with an hammer and things, just to get that little bit of wear into the edge. So we just hold them roughly in place, sort of around there. You can see how it's kind of going to come together. Next piece is to do that front face there. Again, just 15 inches wide. Measure it up, make sure I'm cutting it to the right height. Well, that's the last piece is cut then. So that's the upright at the front, and then I've just replicated that in a piece of plywood for the back. Obviously you're not going to see the back, so there's no point using the really nice reclaimed timber. As for the actual construction then, I'm going to keep it nice and simple. There's various ways I could join these, especially to make it nice and decorative. Can use kind of dovetail joints, even like pocket screws, things like that. But in reality, you're not going to see any of the inside. Well, I don't think you are anyway. Nobody's going to be peeking inside our toilet. So what I can do is in the corners, use this 2x2, obviously screws through there with a bit of adhesive onto the boards themselves, be nice and strong, and all the fixings are hidden out the way. Never going to see them. That makes it so much easier when you're putting it all together, because you're not trying to hold things and get the screws started. They're already in and ready. That is the most beautiful sound in the world. Time for a tea break. Just come to get everything out to start assembling. Realised I've cut that too deep. Obviously I cut it the same depth as it's going to be at the front, that front board that I made. Obviously this back end's got that cut out where it goes over the wing. So I've just marked it up, just need to cut the 3.5 inches off, which is equal to that there. This is now getting to the point then where I need about 15 pairs of hands and ideally about 3 cameras to record it all on, because it's where we're starting to put it all together. In essence though, you can see this is one side and I've marked out there where this needs to go so that the backing board sits flush to the back. Obviously with the backing board sat flush to the back, I can just put a couple of screws through it, just hold it against that back wall, stop the toilet itself moving around. Construction itself then will be a little bit of grip film in place, clamp it down, screw it tight, do the same on both of them, and then I think I'm going to sort of semi-assemble it on the desk here and put the backing board in. That'll keep all the back edge exactly how I want it, and then I can look at lining up the front edge how it's going to look best. That's my plan anyway. My other plan is, hopefully I've done cutting now. I just want to make sure everything's going to fit, because as soon as I've done cutting and I know there's going to be no sawdust in the air, I can get my bacon and sausage going on that log burner. Now I've got the back in, you can see how it's kind of all going to fasten together. Because that's the front, that'll go in like that. Just need to measure up to get the reveals right on there. That'll then be screwed in with the battens again. And then the top section will drop in like that, with the separator cut into there and the toilet seat mounted on top. It's now all just a case of getting the tweaking and the measuring right to make sure all these reveals and the joins all look right, and also make sure it's made up nice and square. Obviously we don't want it twisted one way or the other. What we will almost certainly find though is, because we're using reclaimed timber, not everything sits perfectly flush and what have you. Again, that's the joy of using this kind of thing. It's just getting it to look right. And that's all just with the eye, that's looking at it, yeah, does that look right? No, we need to tweak that. That needs to go further forward, further backwards, etc, etc. There we go, the main box, all fastened together. It obviously will need a bit of a clean up around the edges where the glue's squeezed out and things. But we are going to give it a good sand over anyway. We want to keep some of the character in there, but we don't really want Jim loves Lucy or whatever written on it, like the graffiti that the school kids put on. The top bit then will drop into there, which does just seem a little bit on the tight side now. So we'll just run the sander down the edge there just to take it off. Like I said, we want a nice tight fit. We don't want it loose and slopping around. I am now also thinking I might have a slight change of plan for this top. But my bacon's almost ready. So I'll get my bacon butty, ponder over my little design change, and we'll take it from there in a few minutes. Bacon sandwich and brew finished, although I have got the kettle back on. Just need to wash that bacon down. But there we go. Just sanded the edge of that top and it's now dropped into place nicely. The idea that I've had that I'm going to do is I'm going to add a piece of timber across there, the same as this, and then it will allow me to hinge this. So to empty it, we can actually lift that top section up on a hinge rather than having to lift it out completely. The unfortunate thing is I've no hinges on me at the minute, but I can put the piece of wood in and build the rest of it up, and then at a later date when I've been and picked some hinges up, just add that into there. So it's time to get that saw back out and cut a piece the right size for that back section. As the construction gets bigger, it is more difficult to get the camera into a position where it can pick it all up. But you can see that's it all mocked up there in place, including the white toilet seat. I'm not convinced about that, Dawn, but we'll see what you think. The only thing I think now is, because obviously I added that extra little section into the back, obviously to add hinges at a later date, that's kind of pushed that front end out. So I think I'm going to trim about 1 inch off the back of that main board, and I think that'll about sit right then. Then it's a case of marking up for where we need to cut the hole to put the separator in and attach the toilet seat. Lots of scientific measuring later, or just sitting on the toilet while it were over there and working out where the toilet seat wanted to be. I reckon that's about the right spot for it, which means the separator needs to be fitted obviously the other way up, around about there. So I've just measured up, and that's about 5 centimetres or 2 inches back from the leading edge of that board. So we can move the toilet seat out of the way, put the separator back on, draw around it, and then not cut out that mark, obviously. We then need to measure in, it's about 1.5 centimetres, sort of a bit over 1/2 inch, all the way round, and cut that line, and then obviously the separator with a bit of sealant sits onto that. But I'm pretty happy that's where it wants to be. So hold that in place. So that's got me a mark. Now what I'll do is I'll just cut a little piece of wood that's 1.5 centimetres thick and just run that round the edge, marking the inside edge as we go. Next job then, position the toilet seat. From the various measurements and things I know, we want it about 4 centimetres back on the leading edge there. It's then a case of squaring it up this way. So we've got 9.5 centimetres there and about 10 there, so it just wants to go a fraction that way. Draw around the little tags, and then I can measure back how far down the little tags they are for where the holes want to be. Having just done a quick test fit, by the time the separator's in, it lifts the front of the toilet seat up a little bit, which isn't an issue because it all sits level, other than then trying to tighten the hinges up pulls the back end down. So I'm just going to have to raise these hinges up just by a little bit. So I'm just going to have to cut a piece of this to the right sort of width, and then pilot drill the holes the same distance apart, which is 6 inches. That'll sit under there. When we come to clean all this up, obviously I'll stain that as well. Basically you'll not see it anyway because it's tucked right behind the toilet seat. Just one of them little foibles of fitting a normal toilet seat onto a homemade compost toilet. To all intents and purposes then, that's basically the construction of it done. In essence then, how it works, we've got the bucket for the solids, that goes in there, lid off, some of that cover material in, the wood shavings, the pet bedding, that goes in there. Then you've got a bucket for the liquids. This isn't going to be the one that we're going to use for a start, it's too big, but in essence that sits there. So where you've got that separator, you've got the solids go down the back into the bucket, the liquids go down the front into the plastic bottle. I'll leave that out for now to say it's too big. We'll get the actual gubbins we've been making and drop that into place. Then as you'll see, come to use it, lift the lid, and as I say, it separates into the 2 separate parts. And now I've decided to do it with a hinge. It'll mean each time we need to empty it, clean it, check it, anything like that, we just kind of lift the front up and hinge it. And I'll probably put a little wooden support just to hold that up as we do it. So that's the actual construction of the toilet and the basics to how it works in here. What I'll do now is I'll take you outside and show you the area that we use on site for dealing with the waste from a compost toilet. As a final point in here though, still not sure about the white toilet seat. I think it should have been a natural wood colour. What do you reckon? Here we are then, this is all it is, 2 bins. Basically, fill one up over the space of maybe 12 months. Each time you empty your solids bucket, pop it in there. Once this one's full, we leave that for 12 months and continue filling that one. After the 12 months, that's perfect compost, ready to go on the plants, out in the garden. That's the whole circle of life. Does it smell? Not in the least. Is it dirty? Not at all. So that's the solids. What about the liquids? Well, they can actually just be spread around in the hedgerows and things like that, just like animals do all over the world. What we tend to do is pop that in the Elsan and that goes away with the normal toilet waste. So hopefully you've liked this video and you're already subscribed to the channel. Ding the little bell, that gives you notifications each time we put a video on. We'll see you next time when we carry on winging it here on Leander Lady.